Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Money Maverick podcast, where we expose the fallacies of traditional financial advice. I'm Tim Turley, the host for today's episode. We have the privilege of having one of our favorite returning Money Mavericks today on the show, Mr. Kyle J Christensen from San Antonio, Texas. But before we get into that, I wanted to let you know how you can learn more about the truth on money and some of the things we talk about on the podcast. Simply go to www.uniqueadvantage.biz, or you can call us at 888-881-4445. That's 888-881-4445. There's a lot going on in the world of money and finance, Kyle, and I wanted to talk to you today about a critical subject matter, which is the difference between financial freedom and retirement, the word retirement. And I think it would be helpful for our listeners to have you talk about the semantics of these words, because the meaning of words are really important when we talk about money. And money usually is sacred to people. You know, having been on the other side of the coin, so to speak, and teaching about, people about what they need in retirement and using the word retirement a lot and the word needs, I didn't know what I didn't know. Thought I was doing the right thing, counseling people, but I just didn't have any clue many, many years ago when I was doing this that way. I was not setting a good foundation. In fact, it was a foundation built on a sand, right? Which kind of our biblical analogy there. And so lately I've been reading a lot of headlines in business websites and business magazines. And, it's funny. You know how you can turn on 7 different nightly news shows and the hosts say the exact same words at the same time on the same night? Like somebody literally handed a memo to all the news organizations and they repeated the same line. Well, that's kind of what it's like with financial planning when some kind of article comes out that everybody grabs onto. And what I'm referring to is in the last 3 to 6 months, I see this repeated message, featured articles in online news sites that says the new number that someone needs for retirement is $1.45 million. And you go to 3 other business websites or the local news website, same thing. They just reprint the article that's shared. $1.4 million is what people need in retirement. And of course, that's really bothersome at many levels. So let's dive into that, Kyle. Welcome back to the show. We're glad to have you on again. Wish we could have you on every week. Talk about what the needs-based thing is going on and the difference between financial freedom and retirement.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me again. And it's always a pleasure to be on the Money Maverick podcast. I think you hit so many great topics that are important for people to become more aware of and learn more about. As you were talking about that, I thought about the 6-foot rule during the pandemic. And, they presented it as such factual, and I'm probably going to get in trouble. I might get you in trouble actually on this, but we are Mavericks, right, today. So
this is the Money Maverick show. We tell it like it is.
So they presented the 6-foot distancing rule as so scientific, and it was just matter of fact, right? And everybody, used it. All the businesses that were allowed to be open, they used it. They put tape down on the floor. They maybe even painted right on the ground, the spacing and all that kind of stuff. And then come to find out, it wasn't scientific at all. It was just somebody submitted that in an essay, a kid actually, and they ran with it and they presented it as just pure truth. You're saying that we're seeing the new number is $1.45 million and it's being repeated over and over again. I'd like to see the science behind that. I'd like to see how they're coming up with that number. It's a little bit crazy. Again, it goes back to the foundational problem of traditional planning, which is that you can somehow predict the future, how much people need. It's just it's a futile effort, right? To try and make that prediction.
Hey, Kyle, what?
And that's why, yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
That's why what? Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to say that's kind of the foundational problem with all of traditional financial planning.
So how do you think they did come up with the 1.45 million that someone needs in retirement? How do you think they came up with that number?
Well, what was the number before? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, the numbers that I
Was it a
remember
million
reading,
dollars?
the numbers I remember before were actually higher, I think, or it was like 1.2 or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
1.2 million.
they probably had to they probably had to adjust it upward in light of the fact that everybody is intimately aware that everything costs more now. And so they're like, "Oh shoot, we got to change this number." And they're kind of incentivized to keep the bar low because if people feel like, "Hey, I'm getting close to the right number," then it kind of reinforces. It's just a matter of behavioral science, right? If you're trying to instill a behavior in yourself or in somebody else, what do you do as people make progress? What are you supposed to do to encourage them?
Do
You
more?
you reward. You
Right.
reward them, right? You got to
Yes.
celebrate, you got to reward. So they're incentivized to keep the bar low, which I'm sure we're going to talk about at some point. Um, the idea of only needing to replace 70 to 80% of pre-retirement income being a goal.
Why would that be a goal that a financial professional tells somebody? Why would you want to have less than what you ended making in income?
Well, logically, I don't think it makes sense. I think they're just trying to tell people that enough that it just becomes fact, right? Like if you just repeat it, if all financial institutions and all of the professional financial planners are saying that that's the goal, then how do you argue with it, right? It's kind of like the 6 foot rule. If all the news organizations are saying that's what it is, and the CDC saying it, and the World Health Organization saying it, then you just kind of accept it, right? That's just how it is. And I think the financial planning world has done the same thing as far as this goes.
Back to that 1.45 million needs in retirement goal. What's fascinating about that is it's a blanket statement. First of all, it's based on a faulty premise, but it's 1.45 million for everybody that's retiring. Like everybody's the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So those are, again, you just have to wonder, like, what's really the purpose behind that? Why are they even showing that or bringing that out to the public? Um, yeah, I mean, everybody's lifestyle is different. I guess they don't care what your lifestyle is. I guess they don't care that that's something that might be important to you. And so they're just saying, hey, here's just kind of a heuristic, right? This is a rule of thumb that you should replace 70 to 80% of your income, or 1.45 million's now the target goal.
That's so interesting. Let's get back to the premise of our conversation today is you teach and you have your book, Principles-Based Planning, that's available on Amazon and Kindle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Amazon and Kindle. And the premise is that financial freedom should really be the goal, not retirement. So let's talk about semantics. Let's go to the word retirement first. And retirement is always the goal, but what does it actually mean to retire? And why is that not probably the best pathway to guide somebody down?
Yeah. So if you look in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word retirement means to quit active working life, and it's an age, the age at which you retire. Uh, so it's a time frame, and it just means to quit, right? It means that you're no longer actively working, right? Uh, and I think that what's happened is if you look back at the rules of financial institutions, which I talk about in my book, they just want our money, right? And they're incentivized to keep the money for as long as possible and to give back as little as possible. And so if they could convince, if they had the wish of their heart, right? And they could say, this is what we want everybody to do. They would say, we want everybody to send us money on a regular and ongoing basis, and we want them to kind of forget about it for decades. Just leave it with us for decades. Well, if you were to actually tell, if you were a financial institution and you were actually to tell the client, your customer, what you really want them to do, you would say, I want you to send me money and I will never send it back to you. But nobody would do that. Nobody would fall for that. So it can't be quite that blatant, right? And so they've adopted this idea of retirement, right? That retirement's the goal. And so you think about it, what are the most common ways that people try and achieve retirement? Well, they put money in IRAs, they put money in 401ks, SEPs, simples, right? And pensions, right? So they're putting money in all of these things. And how many of them are even allowed to give you money or give you any sort of income before age 59 and a half?
They don't.
They don't. They're actually designed to penalize you, right? And so
So
there's extreme restriction.
why should somebody care about that, Kyle? Why should somebody care that they put their money in an employer plan like a 401k or a private IRA or a simple IRA or SEP or something like that? Why would somebody care that they don't get any income from that until age 60?
Well, I think that goes to the other words that we're trying to define, right? Which are financial freedom, right? So financial freedom, and I would just take the word freedom. Freedom means the ability to choose, to have unrestricted use. Okay, that's what freedom means, and I think that's what people want. I think ultimately people want the ability to use their money, to be able to not rely entirely on their ability to work, because maybe at some point in time they're not able to work, but they would like to become less and less dependent on the money that they're earning from their day-to-day job. So that's actually freedom. That's financial freedom. That's not what retirement means. It's financial freedom. Retirement means to quit active working life. And here's how we can tell that there's a difference between those two words, or those two objectives. Can a person retire and not be financially free?
Absolutely.
Yes. And in fact, the majority of Americans who are retired are not financially free. And we know that because if you look at the level of dependence on Social Security retirement income, 67% of retirees in America say that Social Security income is a, quote, major source of income. In other words, for them, they're highly, if not entirely, dependent on Social Security retirement.
That's pretty scary.
That's really scary. And if you know what that level of income can possibly be, it's not very high. Okay. In fact, if that's all you're getting, you're actually under the level of poverty as far as the federal government's concerned. You're considered in poverty. And so you can qualify for benefits. You can qualify for food stamps, things like that, right? At that level. So that's not the goal. The people can retire and they're not financially free. I mean, they could retire and be financially free, but we know that most people are not. Could you be financially free and not retire?
Yes.
Yes. So it's possible that I actually really love what I do. That the goal of just quitting because I hate my job and I hate what I do, that the financial institutions are trying to put on top of us. They're trying to say, look, Tim, your ultimate goal should be retirement. Maybe not. Maybe, Tim, maybe you really love what you do and you feel like you make a difference in the world and you want to keep doing it. Okay. You could keep doing that. You could be financially free and keep doing what you do. Right? That's possible.
But I have a choice now.
Yep. You have a choice. And
That's
so
the
that's
freedom.
all we're saying, that the objective of financial planning really should be financial freedom as much as possible for each individual, and not necessarily retirement. Retirement is not a capability. Retirement is quitting, right? It's a decision.
That brings up another point, Kyle. It's kind of a two-part question. One is, what is characteristic of financial freedom? That's the second question we'll get to in a minute. The first part is the word net worth. Financial applications have a net worth question. If you, for any type of a financial application, it's a question that's brought up in casual conversation. What's their net worth? Or they're a high net worth individual. So we usually think people that live in the wealthy neighborhoods, up near the mountains more, or by the lake, and that all the $1 million houses around the lake. I would bet that most of those people consider themselves successful because of their net worth number. But what's the issue with having net worth as even something you look at? Why is that not necessarily a valid number to base your success on?
I love the points you're bringing up, because think about how actually invaluable or not valuable, not invaluable, but not valuable net worth is. I mean, if you have high net worth, let's just think about the people who live up high on the mountains. How can they afford the house that they're living in? Is it their net worth or is it their income?
It's their income.
It's their income. Interesting, right? It's not their net worth. They don't go to the bank and say, hey, my net worth is X, and so will you give me a loan for this multi-million-dollar house? They say, this is my income, and so will you give me a loan for this multi-million-dollar house? So although net worth, I would say, is valuable to some degree, it's not actually the most important factor in explaining financial freedom, right? I would say that the majority of the people who live on the hill who have the multi-million-dollar houses are also in dire straits financially, right? They have high income, which gives them the ability to buy the house that they buy and drive the cars that they drive. But in most cases, they're extremely high spenders, not really wise with their money, and they don't have what we would call real assets. So they're probably not close to financial freedom for the most part.
And as Robert Kiyosaki calls fake assets, they don't produce income.
That's right. Yep. So they buy Robert Kiyosaki's whole premise for like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all of his book series is that most people buy liabilities that they think are assets. So, and that's
So
why
interesting.
they don't ever become rich, or we would call them financially free. He calls them rich.
Interesting. So let's go deeper into that second part of the question. The traditional world wants us to think about a retirement age and the word retirement and leaving your money with the institutions for the rest of your life and hoping it will work out, and using words like needs-based and nest egg and what's your number at retirement, all these phrases and words that are used.
Safe withdrawal rate, sequence of returns.
Yeah,
They have
dollar
all kinds
cost.
of good
Yeah,
big
dollar
words.
cost averaging, right? Target dated fund, all these fancy words out there. Um, so, and net worth, like we just talked about. So we know from their numbers, the institution's numbers, that has been a failed experiment. It's not us saying it. We look at their data that they publish, and the party balloons are not going off saying this has been an awesome deal. So let's shift over into what financial freedom really is. If the traditional way has by and large been a failure, then what is financial freedom really, and what is it based on, and how can somebody work towards that?
Yeah. So just this morning, I posted on LinkedIn because there was an article that just came out from CNN just saying that the number of millionaires in 401k accounts has reached a record high. It's an all-time high, which we're so shocked that it's at an all-time high because the market is at its all-time high. So it kind of makes sense. And we also have trillions of dollars more in the system. So thus we have super inflated stock prices, right? But yep, we have a record number of millionaires in 401k accounts. And guess what percentage that is? Based on Fidelity's own reporting.
But
2%.
yes, yeah,
It's
1 to
2%.
2%. 2%.
2%. It's they give the numbers. It's 497,000 401k account holders have $1 million or more now in the United States with Fidelity. And that sounds like a lot until you find out how many 401k accounts Fidelity actually manages, which is 26 million. So just do the math. 97,000 divided by 26 million is 2%. Okay. So 98% of 401k account holders are not at millionaire status. And we're at record highs right now in the market. So I think that points to the miserable failure that 401ks have actually been for 50 years. They haven't worked. Like, there should be a significantly higher percentage. And somebody might say, well, but that's accounting for all ages. And I'll say, okay, that's fine. I'm a Gen Xer, and they brought that statistic in too. Fidelity reported that statistic. Well, guess what the median balance for a Gen Xer is? The next generation that's supposedly supposed to be reaching retirement in age in the next 10 years, which is kind of scary to think about. But guess what the median balance is? $55,000. That's what Fidelity is reporting.
Wow.
Median. Among Gen Xers that are now in their 40s and 50s, right? They have 55,000 or less, half of them, right? Again, you can't look at that and say, wow, this has worked really well. So let's go back to your question. What's your question? Remind me the question, Tim.
So let's transition now. And these are not your words or my words,
Your
right?
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Financial freedom. So what is that then? If it's not traditional planning and traditional employer-sponsored retirement plans, and by your own references, people can go look it up. It's not worked. Okay. So what's the alternative?
So we define financial freedom as having income from assets. So investment assets, they could be business, real estate, it could be even stocks, right? We're not anti-stock market. We're just saying, you're getting income. The money's coming back to you, okay, in the form of income, which, by the way, most stocks do not produce income, and most mutual funds don't. So it's mostly business, mostly real estate that produce income. And so you're getting income from those assets that is sufficient to maintain or exceed your chosen lifestyle. That's what financial freedom is, defined by us.
And
So
how does somebody get there? How does somebody get there?
Well, so if they're doing 401ks and IRAs, how long before you start getting income from it?
59 and a half or older.
And even then, does it actually produce income?
No, you're just taking it out.
Yeah, you're just selling it. That's not
Selling
income.
it. Right. Correct.
Okay. So that's the first thing, right? The first thing is that we should be saving money in places that are liquid, guaranteed, and accessible. And in our planning process, in the principles-based planning process, we teach people what all the options are for having liquid, guaranteed, accessible money. So you've got to have guaranteed, liquid, accessible money because we're going to use it. We're going to use that money for opportunities, right? Real asset opportunities. So that could be starting a business. It could be expanding your business. It could be investing in your business. Andrew Carnegie, I just finished reading his autobiography earlier this year. He said that the only place people should invest is in their own business. That's it. He said you should never invest in anybody else's business, but you should invest in your own. And the reality is the majority of people who become financially free do exactly that. They invest in their own business. Number two, they invest in their own property. Okay. And when we talk about property in the arena of real estate, it's huge. Like, I think people only think oftentimes about residential rentals. But every time I go downtown San Antonio, I park in a parking lot and I pay fees, and it's just this junky parking lot in the middle of town. They're just raking money in, and all they have is asphalt with lines painted on it, and a few meters, right? But that's it. And so there's tons of ways that you can invest in real estate. I just think of one of my clients who had a printing business on the property that they on a commercial property that they owned. They owned a little tiny mom and pop printing business, But you know what actually made them the most money? It was the cell phone tower that Verizon had placed on their property, and they were paying them huge lease amounts, every month to keep that cell tower on their property.
Oh,
So
interesting.
just it's an amazing, range of places you can invest into. And I would say the just kind of a caveat to that, the first investment should always be your education, should be your knowledge, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I'm not comfortable investing in a property right away or whatever. And I say you should be uncomfortable. You should be uncomfortable with that because your level of knowledge isn't there yet. So you can gain knowledge by reading. That's the first place to start. And then by listening to podcasts, we have so much information at our fingertips. And then there's mentorship programs. So everything that you would like to invest in, somebody else has already done it and been successful at it. So invest in learning from them, and I think so many people are afraid to do that, or it seems weird to do that because they've been convinced that investing is just sending money to somebody and hoping for a return. But that's not what investing is.
That is so great. I hope people listen really carefully to what you said today. It's so true. It's totally fine, everybody listening, to drop truth bombs. Maybe that's what we should title this episode is Truth Bombs Rule. Something like that. But that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. As we wrap up the discussion, I want to at the end talk about people can get a hold of you and more specifics about the book again, possibly. But we, of course, as you know, we always have a Money Maverick tip of the week. Something practical that somebody can listen to the show today and they can just push stop on the podcast and they can go out and start doing something simple, whatever it is. What would be your tip of the week that somebody could start doing today?
I think the first thing is sign up for our monthly webinar that we have coming up on September 12th. It's easy. It doesn't cost you anything. It's an investment of an hour or an hour and a half of your time in the entire month. But that's something easy to do. I'm reading a really great book by BJ Fogg called Tiny Habits. And really, if we want to do anything significant, it really just is we got to break it down into small steps. And so what I would just ask everybody who's listening to this is, what is your next small step you can take towards financial freedom? And I think a lot of people intuitively know. I think a lot of people know that I should be paying more attention to my money. I should have that be more conscious. I should, start systematically and automatically saving. I should choose a percentage of my income that I want to save. Those are all little things that you can do that make a huge difference down the road.
That's awesome. So as we close out here, how can people sign up for the September 12th webinar and how can they get a hold of you or get a hold of your book again?
Hopefully, Tim, you can put a link for the registration in the notes of the
Okay.
episode. But you can go on Eventbrite and look up online events and look up Unique Advantage, and you'll find our events. And we're going to have ongoing ones, so more in the months to come. And then I would just say go to uniqueadvantage.biz. If you are interested in learning a lot more about the philosophy, I would recommend reading the book, Principles-Based Planning, which you can find on Amazon.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kyle. There's so many things I can say about you, but with that huge head of hair you got, just like me, you might be able to see the red rise up to the top of your head, and that won't look good on camera. So I'll save all the worthy comments until later. But you are an amazing human being. We're so glad to have you on here, and you've changed so many lives, including my own. And we're glad to have you here, mentoring us and teaching us these pearls of wisdom. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.